Now we're going to talk about one of the most common forms of communication with government, which is the ministerial brief. A brief is a document prepared typically by public servants or the government officials or minister staffers to advise a government minister. It provides them with essential information, analysis, and advises them what to do. And the purpose is to equip the minister so they know enough about an issue to be able to make a sensible and rational choice, because ministers have to make choices all the time. So we're going to talk about how you write this. It's a very specific format, but also the lessons are useful in general for communication with government. Now we'll start off by asking a minister about it. Brian Schmidt, who gives regular guest lectures in this course, asked the Industry and Science Minister, Ed Husic, what he wants in a government brief. So let's have a look at what he said.
Start going.
Huh?
This is Honorable Ed Husic.
Okay, this is...
What do you like in a brief? Because my students are going to write you a brief, and no, I will read them for you.
Okay, generally speaking, what's the problem I'm having to deal with? What are the options I've got? What's recommended? And also sources of if we need to test options out. How's that?
Excellent.
Do you like options as well in your brief?
Hmm?
Do you like options?
Yeah,
in your
I
brief
do.
as well?
I sometimes it'll be, we can go down a certain number of paths, and knowing, what's the best path to take out of those and why is always good. But if it's short and sharp and not necessarily
Not an inch thick.
Okay, so let's flesh that out. What do you need in a good government ministerial brief? First of all, it must be brief. That's where it gets its name from, I guess. Ministers do not have time to read long documents, so we're typically talking 1 or 2 pages, maybe with a bit of supporting material at the end, which will not be read, generally speaking. So keep it very, very short. You have to have the key message first. Just like we talked about for press releases in the inverted pyramid style, you don't explain things in order, you explain the key point first. The minister may or may not read any further than that, so they've got to get the important message right up front. The key message has got to be a concise summary of the main issue, recommended actions or decisions required. So it's got to be action focused. What do you want? What does the minister need to do? Can they ignore it? Do they need to make a decision? What do they need to do? That's what matters to them, because they have to make lots of decisions all the time. Then you have the purpose. Clearly state what the brief is for. What is the minister being asked to do? Is it approve, note, decide? Now, of course, all the general communication skills we've talked about elsewhere in the course apply here. You've got to know your audience. Hopefully, if you're working as a senior public servant and briefing ministers all the time, then you get to know your minister and what they want to know. What are they worried about? What problem of theirs can this solve? How much background do they have, and how much more do they need? So this has got to be tailored very much to your detailed knowledge of the minister, what they know and what they want. And of course, the whole general advice about cognitive load theory applies. Minimize the cognitive load. It must be easy to read. It can't be something that leaves the minister saying, now what did that mean? I'm flicking backwards and forwards to understand it. So once again, use plain, simple language. Use headings, dot points to clearly lay out the structure of the entire thing. And if you've got data to present, consider using an infographic with all the information in there. Don't make them flick backwards and forwards between a graph and text somewhere else. So all the things we've talked about before. It should be structured logically. You need an introduction, which will explain the context, why it's important and why it's relevant to the minister's portfolio. So telling them why they need to pay attention to this. Background, short as possible. Why has this come up now? Why is it important? Clear analysis, options and recommendations. As we heard Ed Husic say, he likes to have a few options, but then one should be recommended. And there needs to be enough reason for him to understand why that one has been recommended. Maybe not in huge amounts of detail. And then also implications. If you do this, what could go wrong? What are the risks? What will it mean for future activities? And next steps, where to go from now? Now, The best way to understand this is look at examples, so and that makes no sense in a video. So what I've done is I've produced some written examples of good and bad ministerial briefs in the text below this video for you to look at and try and understand what are the good points and the bad points.